What's up everyone? Welcome to FX Maniac. This is Syed Mahmoud Amiri and welcome to the After Effects CC 2019 Basic Training Series, which is quite a mouthful, but that's what it is. So it is January, the first day of 2019, and yeah, I just thought of doing a basic training series on the latest version of After Effects, which is the 2019. And for those of you who have never used After Effects before or just opened it the first time and you just want to learn it and get up and running with After Effects, this is the perfect start for you guys. And for those of you who already know After Effects and already know the basics, well, you can just stick around and maybe you'll get something out of it. Okay, so yeah, we'll just get started. And the first thing that you're gonna face when you open up After Effects is the home screen, which is new in 2019. It's just basically showing you guys the recent projects that you have done, and you can create new project, open project, or anywhere, and you can create a team project also and these things. So we don't need this for right now. We'll just close this off, and this is the main interface of After Effects. The very first thing that you're going to notice is we got all these panels. We got the project panel, the effects, the composition, the timeline, and all of these are called panels, which they're used for different purposes, which we're gonna get into a bit later. And the other thing that you're gonna recognize is all of these panels are customizable, and by customizable I mean you can resize them and you can like make them large or small depending on your needs and however you like them. And if you go to the window menu, the workspace, we have all these workspaces that you can use. If you've used Photoshop or any other Adobe software, you might know that there are different workspaces for different purposes, but normally we use the default one, but I just wanted to let you know that you can change it. And if by any chance you mess up something, something's messed up or something goes wrong, you don't have to worry about it. Just go to window, workspace, and reset, and you can reset them and it'll be back to normal. Okay, you can do the same thing from here, I believe. Yeah, here is the workspaces. So the next thing that I want to talk about in After Effects is the project window, which is very important, and this is where all your files is saved. Everything you import, everything you make, all of the things will be saved here. Okay, so how to import files in After Effects? The very first method is you go File, Import, and File. And it will basically pop up a window where you can browse from your PC any folder anywhere that you have media files, and you can just shift or just select them by just dragging them, or you can just control and select as you wish, or you can just hold down shift and click on the first one while holding down shift, click on the last. It will select all the files. And if you want to deselect a file from this selection, just hold down control and click on that and it will be deselected. Okay, so for now I'm just gonna go ahead and import them all, and here are all the files that we've imported. So if you double click, it's gonna open up in the footage window and we can just see it, play it. And this is only for preview purposes. It's not for like working. We can't work here. All the work will be done in the composition window. Okay, and we can check the image and everything. So the next very important thing that you have to keep in mind, since you already got started in After Effects and it is a very important habit to get into, is the project management. Because as like with every aspect of life, like management is really important to keep track of things nice and tidy. So we have these images, we have these video clips, and we have one audio file. So what I'm gonna do is shift select all of these footage or the video files, and I'm just gonna drag it into the new folder button, and it's gonna create a folder, and I'm gonna call it like video. And we can just click here also and we create a new folder, and we'll go with pictures or images, and I'll shift select these images and put them in. And this audio file, I can just drag it here and make an audio. So now everything is nice and tidy in its own folder. You don't have to search here. Like everything you need, you can just go to the specific folder and just find it. Okay, the next thing is that how do we create a composition or the work, like how do we start working in After Effects? There are basically two ways to do it. The first one is you create a composition from the exact same settings of the video you shot. Say you have a video promotion that you need to do, and you shot some footage and you just want to do like the start a composition and start working on the footage. So what you do is just basically drag the video into this empty area or the new composition, wherever, and it is going to create a new composition. You can see the timeline here with the exact same settings, the duration, the size, and the frame rate of the footage. Okay, yeah, so this is it. I'm gonna hit Control Z. The next one is you want to create a composition, start working from scratch with your own settings. Okay, so you can just click here, or you can go to the composition, new composition, or there's another way. You can just click here, make new composition, and all of the three are the same. So the first thing is I'll just name the composition. It's going to be the first comp, I'm going to call it. You can call whatever you want. And here are the video presets that you're going to use. You can choose NTSC, PAL, HD, 4K, depending on your needs and what are you producing for. So for now, I'm just going to go and check this HD 25 frames, which is 1280 by 720, 25 frames. And the duration is like how much you want this composition to be. So the first one is the frames, the second one is seconds, and then the third one is the minutes, and the last one is the hours. So I'm just gonna make it 15 seconds for now, and I'll hit OK, and it's gonna create a blank composition for me with the duration of 15 seconds and 25 frames. And you can see that we got the composition here, so I'm just gonna drag it here into the new folder, and I'm gonna make a folder called compositions. Okay, so just make sure that your project is nice and tidy along the way. So now I would just like to introduce you guys to some layers inside of After Effects, and we'll just start working inside. And if you don't get it till now, it's completely fine, just follow along. You know, I'm not expecting you to get everything that I'm saying right now, but if you do the work and follow what I'm doing, I'm very sure you'll get it. Okay, so we'll go to create a new layer. You just go to layer, new. We have multiple layers. So the very first thing that I'm going to introduce you guys is the solid. Solid is basically a placeholder, a solid color, which you can just click here and make any color you want, and maybe like blue, and you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call it background or BG, and hit OK. And it is going to create a solid color in the timeline, which is this layer. And what it's going to do is this is the layer, and we can apply effects to it. Okay, so in order to apply effects, we need a solid, and in order to apply effects, you can go to the effects and presets here in the tab, search any effect you want, or if you know the place where the effect is, you can just go from the effect menu, maybe any effect, apply any effect. I'm just going to go to generate, and I'll apply the gradient ramp effect. Okay, you can also search it here, gradient ramp, and it'll come up here. Okay, once you apply the effect, this is the effect controls that allows you to control the effect. And if it's not already there, you can just select this solid and go to the effect and effect controls, and it'll come up. And all the settings and all the parameters of that effect will be shown here. So I'm just gonna click here on the first color, and I'll change it to maybe a light blue, and on the end color I'm just gonna make it a dark blue, like this. So this is the effect, and you can just move the handles and like do whatever you want. So this is our background, and I'll just slowly build a mini project and show you guys how it's working, After Effects and all those all the other layers. Okay, so I'm just gonna go to layer, new, solid again, and this time I would like to make a 3D layer, and I'll make this bigger. So I'll go with maybe the size, the width 2600 by 2600 width and height, and I'm just gonna name this maybe floor. And if I zoom out, and if you want to zoom out, you can use the wheel of the mouse, roll in and out, and it's gonna zoom in and out. So now you can see that this layer is pretty big, and I can move it around in 2D space. X and Y means horizontally and vertically, using the move tool. Now I'm going to introduce you guys to the 3D space in After Effects. If I just click on this layer, if you don't have it, you can just click on the toggle switches or hit F4 if it's not there. And if I click on this 3D layer switch, you can see that we have the X space, the Y space, and this blue one is the Z space. So what I'm going to do is take the rotation tool, which is going to rotate this around, and I'm going to rotate this on the X direction, hold down shift till it snap, and I'm just going to take the move tool and bring it down on the Z. And as you've noticed, After Effects is not a true 3D program, which means you don't have any extrusion or depth on each 3D layer. It's somewhat between the 2D and 3D, which is called 2.5D. And yeah, so we've created our floor. Now I'm just gonna apply an effect to it, which is called the grid effect. And I'm gonna take the grid effect and I'll apply it. And as you can see, the grid effect is basically creating a grid. If I go to the effect controls, I can just change this to width slider, and I'll just increase it or decrease it depending on how you want it to look. And I can change the border, means the thickness of the lines, maybe this much. And I can change the blend mode to maybe overlay, something like this, or multiply, or soft light. However you like it is fine. So if you want to change the solid color right now, you can just go to the layer and solid settings and make it a bit darker so that it looks a bit better. Okay, and okay. So in order to move around in 3D space and control the 3D space, you need a camera. So in order to create a camera, you just go to Layer, New Camera. And we have the different lens presets, just like the real world. And you can use any lens you want, but normally we use the 35mm. And I'll be showing you guys where you use all these 15 and maybe this 200 or 80. But for now, just go to 35 and hit OK. And once you've created a camera, you can go to the camera tools and use them. The unified camera tool is basically using the 3 buttons of the mouse to control the 3D space, which you can use the left mouse click to move around 3D space. Just click and drag. And you can use the middle mouse button to pan or move the 3D space on horizontal and vertical axes. You can just middle click and drag. And the right mouse click and drag will allow you to zoom in and zoom out in 3D space. So yeah, it's just it might be a bit intimidating at first, but you'll get used to it once you practice. Okay, so just keep practicing and you'll get it. Okay, so I'll just adjust the 3D space however I want it. And these other camera tools, the orbit camera, track XY and track Z, are the same things, but you only do it once a time. Okay, you can just orbit, or you can just track XY, and the shortcut is C to move between them. But just it's better to get used to this unified camera because much more easier to do it like at one time rather than going and like picking all of them. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit Control Z to go back to a state, maybe here. Yeah. So now the next thing that I'm going to introduce you guys is the text layer. If you want to create a text, you can either go to Layer, New Text, or just take the text layer and just click and we'll type something. Okay. And if I can just go to the character panel. If it's not there, you can just go to the window and bring the character panel, which is here. And I'm just going to click on it. You can change the font, or you can just increase the size, the kerning, maybe a bit this much. But right now this text is in 2D space. As you can see, if I move the camera, it doesn't move around, just stays there. Okay, so if you want it to be in 3D space and react according to the movement of the camera, you have to turn on the 3D layer. And now you can see that this text is in 3D layer space. And I can just zoom in and increase the size. And if you guys want to, like if you zoomed in and if you want to move around the composition, you can just take the hand tool and move around the composition. Or a very simple method is just hold down the space key and click and drag and move around. Okay, once you're satisfied, that's good. Okay, so I'm just gonna adjust it and hit C to go to the camera tool and adjust the view a little bit. And now you can see that our text is perfectly in 3D space and moving according to the movement of the camera. So I can just take the move tool and move it to this side a bit. Yeah, like this. So the next thing that I want to introduce you guys is the light, the 3D light. But you have to remember one thing. The light and the camera only works in 3D space and on 3D layers. It doesn't work on 2D, okay? So unless you don't turn on the 3D layer, you cannot use the camera and the light. So I'm just going to go layer new light, and there are 4 types of lights. We have the parallel light, which we'll be using later with a mainly we use it with a plugin called Element 3D, which we'll be talking about later. The spotlight, which is just like a spotlight. The point light, just like a point light, emits from one point to all directions. And the ambient light, which is an overall sort of light which lights up the scene. But for now, we're just going to be using the point light, and I'll change the color to maybe white for now. Hit OK, and we can change the settings later also. So hit OK, and now we've created this light, and you can see that it's affecting all the 3D objects. The text, I can move it in Z space also. If I move it back, you can see that the text gets dark because there's no light on it to emit the text. Okay, so you can just move it up or down, and it will just basically gradually emit the scene as it goes, just like a natural light. And the cool thing is I can move the camera around and see where it is in 3D space. Okay, so that's it. And now if you want to change the settings of a 3D layer, you can just hit AA twice, or you go to this little arrow down and go to the light options, and here's the intensity. I can change the intensity maybe this much. I can take the move tool and I can move this up maybe, or down, or however you like it. I can change the color of the light maybe to a bit of a maybe blue or something, or I can change the radius, and all these settings are there. But the one main thing is that in real world, if you have a light, if you have a source of light and there's an object, it will cast shadows no matter what. You can't change it, okay? It's just naturally it happens. But in After Effects and in 3D world or the computer graphics world, you can change it. Like for example, here we have a light, we have a 3D object, we have a 3D surface, but there is no shadow. So if you want to emit, or if you want to cast shadow of this object onto this layer, the first thing you have to do is go to the light settings. So hit AA, and this is there's a cast shadow option. So I'm just going to turn this on. And the next thing you have to do is go to the layer that you want to emit or cast shadow, hit AA twice, and it will bring up the material options. I'm just gonna hit the cast shadow to on. So now you can see, if I take this camera tool, move around, that this object is casting shadow, and you can see it's not perfectly on the ground. So I'm just gonna move it down a bit so it touches the touches the ground. And if I hit C and move around the scene, you can see that we have shadows also. And these shadows are dynamic. That means that it moves based on the position of the light. If I move the light down, long shadows, move the light up, short shadows, just like the real world. Okay, so I'm just gonna make it like this and hit T on this. T is basically the intensity of the light, so I'm just gonna increase it a bit. And there's one other thing. If I hit AA twice in this light, there's the shadow diffusion, which makes it soft. So if you want to make it soft, that's it. So I think that's it for the layers. And now I'm just gonna go and touch on another area of After Effects, which is animation, which is very important. Now the scene is static, you don't have any animation, but what if you want to move the camera around and animate it, and like during time? So what you can do is you can just go to the each layer has a transform setting. If you go down to this arrow and we have the transform, it has the basic transform settings like the position, the rotation, and all those. So I'm just gonna hit Control Z. In this case, we need the position. Okay, so on the left of every parameter we have this little keyframe, and what it does, it basically records the values of this attribute on this specific frame, which is the 0 frame, the start of the composition. And if we move around to, let's say, 4 seconds, and I'll take the camera tool, or I can just change these values. I'm just going to take the camera tool, and if I rotate around, make any changes to the position of the camera, and you can see it's created a new point, meaning there is a new value, the new change in the value of these attributes in this specific point of time, and the frames in between will get animated. So if I hit space, you can see that we have an animation, which is pretty cool. And this green line, what it's indicating is it's saving in the RAM, so the next time you play it, it is gonna play very smooth. Okay, so that's it. If I play, you can see we have our animation, something, and yeah, so we have this animation, and you can do multiple ones also. Say like after 4 seconds, it's gonna go to 8 seconds, and I'm just gonna move it like back a bit maybe, and it should be like this. Okay, so if I play now, we have this 4-second animation is saving in the RAM, caching, and after that, if I play, we have this other 4-second which is moving like this. Alright, so it's pretty cool. This is your first animation inside of After Effects, which I'm not gonna say it's cool, but for just starting, it is fine. So you got your first animation inside of After Effects, and the next thing you can do also is, like, if you want to duplicate this text, you can just select this and just go to edit, duplicate, or Control D, and you can just move it around. I mean, you can just take the move tool, move it in 3D space and Z space maybe, and move it like this much. You can see it's pretty dynamic and reacts according to the light. So I can just bring it here, and as you can see, if I move around, as the camera moves to it, you can see the shadow is this side, meaning that the light is behind it. So I can just change it to maybe shadow, and yeah, that's it. So if I play this now, you can see that the light, the camera moves, and we got the shadow. Really cool. I mean, you can just keep adding titles and move around to them. I'll just leave it up to you guys, but I just told you the basic like principles of movement and animation in After Effects. So the last thing that I want to show you guys is how to add another effect on top of this, and then we'll render it out and take a final render. So I'm just gonna go to layer, new, solid. You can just do the same thing by right click on an empty space in this timeline, right click, new, and we have all these layers. So solid, and I'm just gonna make it the comp size, and I'm just gonna call this particles. And I'll go to the effects and presets, and I'll type CC particle world. We have this CC particle world effect. I'll just put this here, and I'm just gonna do the effect, so you don't have to. If you don't know it, it's completely fine. We'll get into these things later, but for now, just go to the grid and guides and turn these off, because these are the extra guides that we don't need. And I'm just gonna go to the producer and make it big on X and on Y and on Z. And basically, if I play this now, we have these particles. And the one thing that I want to tell you guys is this: you have this 3D icon on some of the effects, which basically means that this effect is 3D from within the effect. You don't need to turn on this 3D layer. If I turn this on, it'll just be a flat layer. But if I turn this off, this effect doesn't need to be like 3D. It's the 3D by default and within the effect. Okay, so just important to keep that in mind. When you see this 3D layer on effect, that means it's built in natively 3D. Okay, so if you want to change the type of these, you can just go to the particle settings and make it like faded sphere, and I can change the birth rate, which basically is the count. I can change them. I can go to the physics, maybe increase the gravity, decrease the velocity or the speed of them, and now you can see if I play, these particles are just going to be there in 3D space, and they're going to fall down. The gravity is a little too much, so I'm just going to make it 0.3. Okay, so, and I'll just go to the modes, click here, and I'll change this to add maybe, so that they're a little bright. And if you want to change the like size of them, you can go to the particle and make the birth size. There's a birth size and there's a death size. The birth size is when they're born, how much the size will be, and the death size when they're like dead, which is pretty self-explanatory. You don't have to explain it. So I'm just gonna make it small, and this one too, and that's it. Okay, so now if I play this, I'm just gonna make a RAM preview fast. So I'll just pause it, and I'll be back when it's done. Okay, so the render or the preview is done. If I hit space now, you can see that we have this cool animation. It's not that cool, but for just starting is completely fine. And I just want to tell you guys that it doesn't have to be text. You can bring images. I can just go to the images folder and just this is too big. I'll just bring this this image, and if I just make this 3D, you can see that it moves along in 3D space. And I can just go to the layer transforms. I can just take the scale and scale it down and move it in 3D space, which you can see is there. And each of these transforms have a shortcut to themselves. So if I hit S is for the scale, P for position, T for opacity, and R for rotation. So just keep that in mind. And if you don't, if you forget the shortcuts, just go down to the transforms. Completely fine. Okay, so I'm just gonna delete this, and the last thing that I want to do is I want to render this out as a video. Okay, because if you don't know how to render it, then there's no use. You can just take the After Effects project everywhere with you and say like, oh, I've done this and I've done that. Okay, so just go to the 8-second mark, which is the end of our composition, and we don't need this extra 15 seconds. So I'm just gonna go here and I'll bring the end of the composition here on the 8-second mark, or you can just hit N and that will be the end of your composition. And I'm just gonna right click here and trim comp to work area, so it will only take the 8 seconds and delete the rest. And now if you want to render it, I'm just gonna go to composition, add to render queue. You can render it directly from After Effects, or you can, if you have media encoder, you can also do it from there. So I'm just gonna do it from After Effects, add to render queue. Click on this lossless and you can change the format. I'm just gonna go with QuickTime, and you can change any preset. Make sure to if you want to have more presets, I just installed this After Effects new. If you want to have more presets, I don't have right now, you have to install the latest version of QuickTime Player, and you'll have multiple H.264 and other formats. Okay, so I'm just gonna go with animation for now because I don't have it. I'm just gonna hit OK, and you can go to the video output. You can change the channels. If you're on the alpha channel, we don't need it right now. And if you want to resize it, for now it's going to be 1280 by 720, but if you want to resize it, you can do it, but we don't need it. And audio will be automatic, and that means that if the audio is there, it will render the audio. If there's no audio, then it's fine. You can just force it also by audio turn on, but I'm just going to set it to auto and okay. And this output 2 is basically where you specify where you want it to render, or where you want to export it. So I'm just going to click on this, and it is going to pop up a window here, and I can just name it maybe my first project, and I'll just hit render, and it is going to render that scene, and this bar is basically showing the progress of the render, and I'll be back when it's done. Okay, so the render is done. If I go to that folder and I have this video, my first project, if I play it, you can see that we have this cool animation, and this is your first animation inside of After Effects. And if you made this far, I just want to congratulate you guys, and yeah, you've done a great job. Just keep practicing, keep following along with the tutorials, and keep doing the work, and that is the only way you're going to learn it. Okay, you can't expect just by watching it and you'll get it. Okay, until unless you don't do the work and you don't face those challenges and you don't know how to do or how to solve those challenges, you're not going to learn anything. Okay, so just keep following, keep practicing. And at last, I just want to tell you guys that if you haven't subscribed to my channels, make sure to do it now, and watch the other tutorials also. And if you have any questions, any doubts, especially on this tutorial because it's your first one, if you have any doubts, make sure to comment them in the comment section for this tutorial, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. And if you have any other problems, just comment them below, and I'll be happy to answer them also. Okay, so this was the first video, and stay tuned for the next ones. And till the next tutorial, enjoy working.